Hey, this is Dan Harris, host of the 10% Happier podcast. I'm here to tell you about a new series we're running this September on 10% Happier. The goal is to help you do your life better. The series is called Reset. It's all about hitting the reset button in many of the most crucial areas of your life. Each week, we'll tackle a topic like how to reset your nervous system, how to reset your relationships, how to reset your career. We're going to bring on top-notch scientists and world-class meditation teachers to give you deep insights and actionable advice. It's all delivered with our trademark blend of skepticism, humor, credibility, and practicality. 10% Happier is self-help for smart people. Come join the party.
Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and I am so glad you are here. The Center in the City podcast is designed to give you reflective and evidence-based insights in how you can stay centered amid the chaos of living and navigating this modern day world. Today in the solo episode, we're going to talk about how to more skillfully manage the overanalyzing mind that really drains our batteries. The overanalyzing mind can show up before making a decision, caught in that what's the best, what's the right decision, or it could be ruminating, chewing on a conversation or an event that happened. When we get stuck in these thought loops, it is so draining. It zaps our attention, it drains our energy, and it creates disconnection not only from ourselves, but from the present moment. So in the pod, we're going to slow this process down. And of course, looks unique for every human, but we're going to talk about how I experience it, what I see with my clients, and give you some action-based and science-based tools and practices that you can integrate right away. So wherever you are listening to this podcast, while on a walk, cooking, driving, maybe cleaning your house, I welcome you to settle in and let's get centered. This last weekend, I had the most perfect example of the overanalyzing mind. And let me tell you, it was so draining and frustrating. I feel like my jaw even just gets tight thinking about it. I was headed on a ladies' backpacking trip. And the day before the backpacking trip, it was just a one-nighter. We looked at the weather and we saw there was threats of thunderstorms and some pretty, sketchy weather. And in that moment, it was a choice point. Do I still want to camp, knowing there is a high probability of thunderstorms and threat of rain? Or do I want to take more of the risk and camp and maybe be drenched, maybe be in a thunderstorm, deal with the uncertainty of Mother Nature? And let me tell you, this was a decision that I overanalyzed so much, and there were so many different choice points within those 24 hours before going on the hike that I had time to stew and simmer and reflect and question and research this choice. And then the funny part is, even after I made my choice, I was still ruminating on it. I was still overanalyzing. Did I make the right one? Oh, what if I actually chose this instead? How would the day have unfolded? And my mind just was so loud. Now, I want to make sure that I'm not judging my mind or criticizing my overanalyzing mind here. I want to highlight that the brain, the body, the nervous system are all designed innately and smartly designed to keep us alive. So that means they're going to send us a lot of signs and signals of what's the quote unquote smart, best, safest decision and choice. Now, knowing myself and knowing this work, this is sometimes where awareness can get really sticky, because the more aware we are of things, which is a gift, it can also add to the overanalyzing soup that then can get even hotter or more crowded and make it harder to make decisions. So it's a balance, and that we're going to talk more about this today, of how do we use awareness in a skillful way so that we're widening possibilities without getting to a place of oversaturation and decision fatigue. So as I reflect on this event, I, got this information that there are thunderstorms. And I was like, you know what? Based on my past experiences camping, I know that I'm miserable if it's raining. It is not fun. And I don't really want to put myself in a position where I'm camping in the rain. That does not feel joyful to me. And thunderstorms actually feel pretty scary and stretchy to be out in the middle of the woods in an alpine lake where there are thunderstorms. Oh, another part of my brain chirps in and is like, oh, are you overreacting? Are you playing small? Are you letting fear control your mind, right? So we have all these parts and pieces of ourselves that start to get really loud and challenge and overanalyze our choices. And through the IFS, the internal family systems model, these different voices that I'm hearing chirping up in the overanalyzing mind might be different parts of myself. And to be very transparent, I haven't sat down to meet each of those parts of myself yet. But those are different parts, and they're no bad parts. So there's not like there's a devil part and there's an angel part speaking. There are various parts that are there again to protect myself. So I don't want to judge myself. I don't want to judge that I am having this extra loud conversation in my mind, because on this deeper level, I know that I'm trying to make the best choice for myself. And I'm trying to make a choice that's coming from my values and from what I actually want, not what I think I should be wanting or what society wants me to do or what the group wants to do. So learning how to listen and discern all of those different parts of ourselves and what they're communicating and where they're communicating from, I know is kind of effing exhausting. And I promise the more that you get to listen and hold space for those parts with a lot of curiosity and compassion, the more you can actually let those parts step back and let your unique, authentic self be the guide that's going to answer, the guide that's going to make the choice. So I decided to not camp. I decided to do a day hike. And on the way down, after some people decided to camp, there were some of us that decided just to do a day hike. On my way down, I kept being like, oh, did I make the right choice? Oh, what would have happened if I actually did bring my pack? Oh, would I, the next morning I was like, oh, did I make the right choice? Like I took a lot of time and energy reflecting on this. And it's because I want to learn, right? I want to learn how to continue to build that trust with myself and how I'm making choices, intentional choices in my life. Now, another really simple example of overanalyzing, like my husband and I have talked about getting a new mattress for years, and we keep going back and forth on our decisions of yes, no, da da da, this one, that one, oh, but da da da, like it just, and it keeps us stuck. It keeps us stuck in making a decision. And we finally just made a decision a few weeks ago and we just did it. And it was like, why did we let the overanalyzing minds of both of us in groupthink take over and keep us stuck for so long? And now on the other side of it was like, wow, that was easy. That was fun. Why did we wait so long? So I welcome you to pause here and think, like, where do you notice your overanalyzing mind showing up? Is it when you're looking at a menu out to dinner? Is it making a decision about dating or maybe dating a few people? Is it overanalyzing if you should go to that party invite that just was sent your way? Does the mind keep going back and forth of should you commit to that vacation or say yes to that retreat? Is the mind overanalyzing a conversation you just had with a coworker, questioning, oh, should I have said this or done this, or did I do that wrong? And I want you to know you are not alone in having an overanalyzing, chirpy, loud mind. And if you haven't yet taken the Overwhelm Archetype quiz, I welcome you to head on over to wadeworld.com/quiz or check the link in the show notes and discover your overwhelm archetype. Because one of the biggest themes with all 6 overwhelm archetypes is this overanalyzing mind, specifically the spinner, but really all of them have a huge flavor because overanalyzing is a huge form of overwhelm for the mind. And how the mind overanalyzes can be a different flavor depending on your archetype. So I welcome you to go check it out. Have that language because I really give you some language to what you might be experiencing, and that supports you feeling more empowered to have this awareness so you can start to recognize when these patterns are showing up for you. And more importantly, then having some tools and some resources of how to be with that pattern in a more helpful way. So it's not holding you back, but instead it's helping you walk with the overwhelm more intentionally. Now you might be asking, like, why do our brains repeat and overanalyze situations or have us stuck in decision fatigue because we're trapped in this analyzing dance? And one of the things we need to remember is that, again, our brains and our bodies and our nervous systems are wired for survival, are wired for protection. So that desire to get it right, the desire to make a right decision, the desire to replay that conversation and have clarity and kind of question, how should I have done that? Or really start to kind of like analyze, it's because our brain wants to feel safe. And so it's replaying or projecting in the future of what could happen so that it could avoid danger. There's a lot of research out there that having an over analyzing mind, the ruminating mind, can lead to mental health issues like increase in anxiety and depression. Because once we let the mind floodgates open to dwelling on the past or to overanalyzing a decision, it's really easy, we talk about this a lot on this podcast, for the brain to go into the negativity bias and get hooked by negative thoughts or past events, which can then help spiral these thought patterns. There are a few different types of this overanalyzing mind. We've talked about there's the rumination, there's the decision paralysis analysis that happens, there's catastrophizing the future, and there's even part of, I think, paralysis analysis, but it could also be its own. Perfectionism can show up. And then sometimes this social anxiety or social overthinking can happen. So let's break these down even more. And we'll also talk about specific ways we can work with each type of overanalyzing mind. So the rumination mind, when this starts to pop up, like, oh, why did I say that in that conversation? Or what would have happened if I did this differently? When we start to chew on these past events or past conversations or connections, we can end in this like draining and endless worry loop that prevents us from moving forward or finding closure or even building self-trust. It can actually heighten more distrust within ourselves because we think, oh, I didn't do that right, or that wasn't good enough. And so we kind of start to create more stress and pressure and anger towards oneself that we're caught in this loop. So the impact is more distrust with self. There could be more anxiety, increased stress, right? More cortisol in the body. So the first step here is to practice mindfulness, to practice awareness, and to name the pattern that is in the mind, like, rumination. Rumination is back again, right? Can we have some lightness when we recognize we're in those thought loops? And then a skillful way to be with this, and this is helpful for all of the different types of overanalyzing mind, but it's to set a timer. Set a timer, give yourself some permission and space to chew on the rumination, but not so much that it keeps you so stuck. So if you're recognizing, you can't just say, okay, I'm ruminating and then let it go. If it's feeling a little bit more stubborn, there probably is some information in there that you need to process and release. And one of the most helpful ways, especially in these overanalyzing mind situations, is to grab a journal and a pen. Ideally, you can also do it on your computer, but I think recognizing it, seeing it on paper can be really helpful. And just get it out, whatever you're ruminating on. Write it down, let it flow, but set a timer so you have this container that supports you just word vomiting it out. And what this does is it not only helps create space from your thoughts, so you recognize you aren't your thoughts, you aren't the rumination, but it also gives you some clarity on, maybe some ways that you acted out of alignment of your values, or maybe some things that you would rather try in the future, or things that you could have done better, or things like, you know what, actually, I did that really well. Why am I, beating myself up over this? Or, hey, maybe I can offer this person some compassion for their experience. So writing it down can help you get some space on the experience, which is very helpful so the mind isn't trapped in the over analyzing, ruminating thought loops. Also, another really helpful practice here when the mind is caught in rumination is to move with it. And on the Centered Walks audio meditation series, there are a couple of specific guided walking meditations exactly for these moments. There is the release rumination and anxiety walking meditation. There is release the day walking meditation. There's the reset meditation and a few others that help you move with these thoughts. And when we move, we create movement. So when we move the body, we also move the mind. And it's a really helpful way to release the mind's grip on the stories and the replaying and the audio tracks and the side commentary that we might hear. So the second way that we might be experiencing the overanalyzing mind when we get analysis paralysis and this decision fatigue, which again, I shared, this is definitely what I experienced this last weekend. The pro and con lists can only work to a certain extent here, and then it can start to become really overwhelming and then get very complex with choices. And sometimes it becomes around safety or around, like all of the decisions and thoughts. And we can even have conflicting values showing up here. And a lot of the time, this analysis paralysis is because we're afraid to make the wrong choice. That could also be tied to perfectionism. And for my overwhelm archetype spinner types, this is definitely present for you a lot of the time of spinning in what's the right decision here. I want to make a right decision. A lot of time there's this belief, if I think harder, I'll figure it out. But one of the most powerful ways that we can be with this decision fatigue, this overanalyzing mind, is to trust ourselves, to trust that we can make the best decision in the moment with all of the information that we have, right? If we are in a moment and we've done our research to gather, we're not going to make a decision that's going to bite us in the butt. Like, we're not going to do that. We're going to make the decision that's going to best support us with the information that we have. So we have to remind ourselves this good enough mentality. And if you remember, I've done a podcast episode on perfectionism, which we'll talk about in more detail in a few moments, but I want to name it here that there's this maximizer perfectionist that loves to make sure that they're maximizing all aspects of everything. And that's exhausting. And so research shows that it's actually better to be a satisficer that just kind of chooses and has this good enough mentality because it helps move them forward. It also helps create longer lasting well-being and happiness. With this overanalyzing paralysis analysis mentality, it's really helpful to remind yourself just to take action, to commit and take a step forward instead of getting stuck. So a helpful way to be with this overanalyzing mind is to also set a timer. Set a timer and say, I'm going to think through these different scenarios. I'll create my pro cons list. I'll talk to my friends. I'll sit down, get quiet with myself. Whatever strategy helps you tune in, give myself that container of time, and then I will go ahead and make a decision. To be fully transparent, this would have been very helpful if I remembered the strategy over the weekend. Because I didn't give myself a time-bound container, my mind just went wild. And I let myself wait until the last minute to fully make a decision. So within this time-bound structure, whatever your strategy is to get clarity. So for me, I recognize that my thoughts can be very ping-pongy, and I can start to then want to crowdsource information. And when I start to go into that mode, that is where I am losing connection to my own wisdom, where I'm outsourcing it. And so because I've learned that pattern enough, I then get quiet and try to just sit with myself and really listen. Not listening to the thoughts in the mind, but listening to what my body is telling me. So last weekend, I recognized I started to talk to a bunch of people about what they were thinking and wanting to do for the camping, hiking trip. And I started to outsource it. And that was a click for me of, you know what, Wade? Reground into yourself, reground into the wisdom of what your body's telling you. Let's drop the thoughts in the mind. And my body so clearly was saying, hey, go on this day hike, enjoy the day hike, but don't need to suffer through being uncomfortable. You don't need to spend the night camping and being wet if you don't want to. And then my mind was saying, suck it up. You can do hard things, push through. Doing challenging things makes you grow. You're going to survive. So at a point, I just had to make a choice, and I went with what my body was telling me. Now, here's the kicker that I think is really important to practice, and I think a lot of us forget to do this step, especially if you notice you're trapped in analysis paralysis in the overanalyzing mind. But after you've made the decision, after the event happened, is to take a moment and reflect. Take that beat and notice, did I make the good enough choice for myself? Did that decision work well? What am I learning about myself from this decision I made, from this experience I just had? So the next morning, when I woke up in my own bed, when I woke up dry, I paused and I asked myself, okay, what did you learn about yourself in this decision? Did this feel like the good enough or quote unquote right decision in that moment? And I got like, yep, you were an 80% right. Like you were 80%, you listened to yourself and that felt good. There was a little bit of self-doubt that creeped in of like, what would have happened if you did choose that other option? And that's where we have to remind our minds that we will never know what would have happened if we took a left instead of a right. And so that's the practice of letting go, like a practice of releasing that experience, that choice point in the past, and allowing ourselves to say and build a stronger relationship to self. Like, okay, I listened to myself. I honored my body. Good job, sweetheart. And keep building that neural pathway to build the self-trust and to anchor into, I know that I have all of the resources, the ability to make choices in life with the information I have on hand. A really helpful practice here, and I see this with my clients, is that when you get into the overanalyzing mindset, when you specifically get into this analysis paralysis and you start to outsource, when you start to crowdsource, when you start to leave your own thoughts and body, that is the perfect moment for you to get quiet, to get still. And a lot of the time, again, we think there's this impulse, I can just think my way through it. But really learning to settle our nervous system so we're not in this fight, flight energy, and to settle, to find some stillness so that we can actually look at our choices with a little bit more space and clarity can be very helpful and very empowering. The third mindset here when it comes to overanalyzers is when we can get into the catastrophizing thinking trap. And so what I mean by this is when the mind can start to spiral in worst case scenarios. So the thoughts go right into, oh my God, this is going to happen. And then that means this, and then I'll die alone. Obviously, that's an extreme statement, but I'm trying to make this point that when the mind catastrophizes, it really goes into these fear-based worst case scenario decisions off into the future. When the mind is off into the future, again, trying to protect itself, it's thinking, okay, if I think far ahead in the future and I think about the worst case scenario, I then can protect myself in the present moment. Catastrophizing is a thinking trap. It is this type of thought that keeps our mind really limited and boxed in. And when we're boxing in our thoughts, we are over analyzing choices, and we're talking about something off in the distance that isn't necessarily true, right? Our mind is making up a story of what might unfold. So then we're starting to overanalyze based on this fabricated future projection. We don't want to get mad at our minds for doing that because, again, it's coming from a place of care. It's coming from a place of safety. We can have compassion that our brain goes there, and some of us might be more prone to catastrophize than others. I know my brain loves to catastrophize, and it is a constant practice to reel it in, to learn how to challenge it and bring my attention to the present moment, because again, the present moment is the only moment I actually have choice in. So the skill here to be with this analyzing, overanalyzing, catastrophizing mind is to, one, name it. This is the flavor of catastrophizing. I'm thinking about the future in these worst case scenarios. Can I bring my attention, use mindfulness to bring my attention back to the present moment and ground myself into what's true for me in this moment? What's true for me in this moment? So using this example that I had this weekend, my mind definitely catastrophized. And that was part of the flavor of the overanalyzing of, oh my God, it's going to be a horrible thunderstorm situation and it's going to be so scary and I'm maybe going to get hurt. And right, it started to spiral out. So I grounded myself when I could name, oh, there's some catastrophizing here, and grounded down into how true is it, Wade, that there's going to be thunderstorms and it's going to be really uncomfortable and potentially even scary. And I had to pause and check in and gain some research, right? Look at some of the facts, look at what was true for me in this moment. And what the facts were saying, to the best of my ability, the weather NOAA update was saying, yep, scattered thunderstorms every few hours. It said little rain, and it gave me some data. And so I said, okay, this is the percentage. Of course, weather shifts. Mother Nature has no rhyme or reason sometimes, and I can't control these other factors. So I get to be with what is in this present moment as I'm making a choice. And it can be helpful in these moments. I have to say, I don't think I did it as best as I could have, and that's a learning for me for the future. But in those moments where we're challenging those catastrophizing thoughts is to come back to what's true in the moment. And even could we look at the more optimistic angle here? because I know that my negativity bias in my brain is very strong. I am super hardwired for survival, and I get to continue to learn how to be showing up in life from love, from trust, to surrender instead of from the control, because controller is my overwhelm archetype, from a place of fear, from a place of constriction. And again, this is where this helpful tool, this helpful practice comes back into place, where after the fact, so after that conversation, after that decision, to check in with yourself and recognize, did my catastrophizing thought actually happen? And you get to then challenge that and realize, you know what, it didn't. And that gets to build more self-trust in resting in that more rational, present-minded mindset that helps cut through the analyzing, the overanalyzing, and helps you feel more present in the moment to make choices. This fourth type of overanalyzing mindset, we're going to zoom in on the perfectionist. And perfectionism is something that comes up very much tied to analysis paralysis, because people who tend to be perfectionist have impossibly high standards for themselves, for others, for life. With these high standards comes a lot of control and strong desire, maybe some strong craving, some striving. And with perfectionism comes a lot of judgment and self-criticalness or critical of others because of this high standard. And let's be real, like, who doesn't want a quote unquote perfect life, perfect situation, perfect job, perfect health, perfect body, perfect everything? However, perfectionism is a false plateau. Like, it is a false destination because nothing in life is perfect. When there is such a strong desire for perfectionism, for this sense of excellence, it can put a lot of pressure and strain, which then creates more chronic stress and maybe easier to be dissatisfied with life, and people can easily spiral into these highs and these lows. And because perfectionists really seek for this type of excellence, they put a lot of pressure on each choice, right? This is where the maximizer and the satisfier come in. This maximizer being this belief that there is an absolute best decision, and they won't stop until they are 100% sure they have the best decision, whether that's with research or whether that's scrolling all of the reviews on restaurants, or whether that's looking at all of the types of pasta sauces that are out there in the grocery store and picking the one that has the most awards or the one that's most popular. And it's really hard here for maximizers to, I don't want to say recorrect the thought pattern, but I want to say maybe open it up, expand it, challenge it, because when you're a maximizer, have maximizing tendencies, you tend to get good feedback like, hey, my research really paid off. I got the best blank. And so it becomes a reward loop in the brain that's saying, I'm doing the right thing because I'm getting the best result. However, research shows that maximizers tend to experience more anxiety, more dissatisfaction, and they tend to have more regret. Whereas satisficers, or people who lean towards being a satisficer or acting with this intention, is they pick the good enough option. They stop searching once they hit their criteria. And research shows that satisficers tend to make their decisions faster. And again, not that faster is better. It's just they come to a decision faster. They end up having more mental energy and generally are happier with their choices. And if you're somebody like me, even hearing the words like good enough, I kind of feel like, what? I don't want something that's just good enough. I want something that's fucking great, right? That's the kind of life I want to be living at. And I want to say that's okay. Like that's beautiful that I have the desire for that fucking great kind of energy. And at the same time, can I take that pressure off that every decision throughout my day, throughout my week, throughout my months, throughout my years and planning has to be at this maximizer mentality. So going back to some practices here, if you're noticing the perfectionism, this maximizer is creeping into your life and it's affecting the overanalyzing mind, I welcome you to practice this good enough mindset and play with it. Play with how you can start to integrate it into your day and notice what starts to come up. Like, can you order something off of a menu and it be good enough? Maybe it's not the best thing or the most popular item on the menu, but can it be good enough? Personally, I have practiced this exact thing in years past. And it being able to have this good enough mentality has given me so much more freedom. It just helps me flow with life. It helps me be more flexible. And therefore, I enjoy my time more, whether it's with myself or with others. So if you notice that you are in a maximizing mindset, put a time container on it. Note it, right? Practice awareness. This is perfectionism showing up. I'm noticing some maximizing tendencies. Let me allow myself to investigate for 15 minutes here, and then I'm going to pick the good enough option. I also think what tends to happen here with perfectionists is we're looking for the external world to validate our answer instead of the validation coming from inside. So inside knows when it's good enough. But when we focus on the external, how are other people going to interpret my choices? That's really where we can get hooked on the stronger desire to maximize the results. So to work with that, I welcome you to tune internally, tune into yourself and really get to know what good enough means to you. You get to hold the ruler. You get to discern. It's not about judging self, whether you're doing a good job, bad job, but it's really you getting to discern here with kindness that, yeah, this feels good enough. This feels right enough. And if your mind and your heart start to ache or spiral even more, and it brings up some self-worth conversation, like, well, am I even worthy of good enough? Or in order to be worthy, I have to have the best. This is where the practice of self-compassion can be really helpful because you're tuning and tending to this inner ouch, this inner dialogue that is saying or challenging your worth by the output, by the external experience. And so when that's present, which is so common, speaking to that place where it might feel a little judgy or self-critical, and being like, oh, I see you, sweetheart. I see you are doing the best you can. I see you tried to make the best decision you could with the information that you had. You are enough just as you are. And allowing yourself to fully receive those words of compassion as best as you can really help that internal dialogue where that sense of pressure and criticalness can get really loud. The fifth and final mindset when it comes to overanalyzing is when we get trapped in overanalyzing social interactions. And this is so common. As humans, we are social animals. We want to be accepted into different communities. We don't want to be left out. We want to feel a part of something. And one of the things that can really stir up a lot of anxiety or panic for people, this is very true for people who do a lot of public speaking, when you are on stage, so to say, so whether that's in front of a few people talking to them and their eyes are on you, whether you're on a big stage and you have many eyes on you, that activates a part of our brain, the amygdala fires because it's saying like, people are looking at me and I am by myself and this feels scary. It feels like I am potentially in danger, of threat, of disconnection, of threat, of being judged by a group of social animals that I so deeply want to be accepted by. So whether you're at a networking event, you are sitting around a conference table at work, you are at a friend's barbecue, meeting new people, it is very common to notice the mind starting to overanalyze everything that you do. Oh, why am I wearing this outfit? Or, oh my God, what is my body language saying right now? Or, oh, why did I just say that? Or, oh, I should say this, or I should bring this dish because this is really, or I want to say this because I think this will sound really smart. And then my boss will think of me for this project and da 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 da. And this over analyzing of social interactions can very much trigger another thinking trap called mind reading, where we think we know what other people are thinking about us. So when we go into social interactions and we see Jessica look at us and she doesn't smile, we think, oh my God, she's totally mad at me because I never texted her back 2 weeks ago, right? Our mind kind of creates some stories, whereas Jessica could just be zoning out. So when you notice your mind over analyzing all these different social interactions, kind of like chess pieces, it becomes so taxing and draining. And worst of all, it takes you out of the present moment because you're living in all of these stories or critical self-judgments. So some helpful ways to navigate this over-analyzing mind in social situations is one, again, name it. Notice if it's happening. Name it to tame it. Bring yourself back to the present moment. Use mindfulness. Anchor into your body. Feel your feet grounded. Feel your body in place and space. Maybe even connect to your senses. Noticing scent or sight or hearing or texture or smells that are in your space. You can practice relational mindfulness. So this balance of being present in your body, feeling grounded in your body as you hear other people talking, and notice, does the mind start to wander and think about what you're going to say next, or judging what you're thinking about, or judging what they're saying? Can you bring it back to the present moment and just listen? Listen as the words arise, and then notice what's happening inside of your own mind and body. Another really helpful practice is to practice being present in these social instances, especially around people that make you feel safe. So, really get good at this when you're in company with people that you feel safe around, that people that you care about, people that make you feel seen. This is going to support you feeling more resourced, feeling like you can come back to the present moment without getting into the over-analyzing mind when you're in spaces that feel maybe a little bit more stretchy, in new spaces with new people or professional settings. And then another really helpful practice here is to build your own self-confidence, to be able to connect to your own inner dialogue with more self-compassion than self-judgment. And so you want to kind of work on maybe that tone, or connect to having a kinder way of observing what's happening, so that the overanalyzing mind isn't being as critical or judgy. I've had clients in the past who have been in these situations and have had something like a really smooth gemstone or something in their pocket that felt meaningful to them, that they could hold. Nobody else knew what was going on, but they would be rubbing it or fidgeting with it. And that was a really helpful grounding technique that supported them feeling safe in their body, finding that sense of regulation in their nervous system so that they weren't as anxious and spiraled in the mind. When we get to practice being with these over-analyzing mindsets in supportive ways, we get to learn how to manage our thoughts so our thoughts aren't managing us. And with that, we start to have more freedom. We get to feel more present. We get to feel more easeful. We get to actually feel like we're in more flow with life than feeling like we're struggling or wrestling with life. So go slow here. Know that you are human And overanalyzing is part of the wiring to keep us safe. And so noticing, being able to practice, noticing when that mind starts to get into overanalyzing mode. And again, you can zoom into what flavor out of the 5 we've discussed and think about some strategies that you can use over time to support yourself. But the biggest thing is just to practice naming it, highlight that mindful awareness that, oh, that perfectionism is showing up. Oh, some analysis paralysis is showing up. And once you get to name it, you get to tame it, and you get to start to implement these specific practices that can support you coming back to your center. I would so love to hear what's resonating for you. There was a lot shared here. Let me know as this episode kind of settles into your brain and body, where are you noticing that this type of overanalyzing mindset is showing up? Is it more in your personal life, more in your professional life, in your relationships, in how you plan, in how you parent, in your health? And then share with me one tip, one practice you are excited to do within the first 24 hours of listening to this episode, and really take a moment to note it and see if you can integrate it into your life. Share with me your insights, your takeaways. Reach out on Instagram at OneWade. Send me a note linked in the show notes. Thank you, as always, for listening and sharing these podcast episodes. It means the world to me, and it's how this podcast gets to grow organically and make bigger and more impact in this world, which is part of my deep mission here. Until next time, stay centered.